Wakenya wanajiuliza.
Ukiendelea utanikasirisha.
Hapana, si kuhusiana na swala 2022.
Source of your help.
What,
of your wealth.
how is that important to you?
And I'll not allow you to ask any other question. I'm the governor of Nairobi. This citizen is in Nairobi.
Interviews sometimes can get ugly. You could ask me about it, and it could make for great TV, but what are the ethics?
Media is not negative. They are okay.
Sometimes among the masses we feel that there may be not a balanced way of doing it.
Tonight from Views on the News, we asked Mwananchi what they think about the news. Is it just negative or just a reflection of the society? All right, let's meet our guest tonight. And right next to me, but on the full screen, we'll have a split view of who is on the show tonight. Lydia Mathia, she is a governance and youth policy specialist, but as well as a trained journalist, and is here to lend her view on the various issues that we'll be discussing tonight. Charles Kerich is right next to her, and he is currently the CEC, or the executive in charge of the county executive in charge of finance and economic planning in the county of Nairobi, as well as formerly managing editor at The Star. We'll be quoting one of the articles that were done this past week. A lot of reaction to that. Next to him is a veteran, in my view, and one that I look up to, Christine Nguku. She's now training many, but is also at the Media Council of Kenya as a manager in charge of training and media development. And another veteran, that is Macharia Gaitho, who will give us his candid views on today's issue, and that is the handling of interviews and the ethics therein. But first, on the first day of this month, that is Madaraka Day, the president gave an urge to the media to paint a more positive light and view of the country, because he felt that we are overly negative. But we went around and asked people around the counties whether they felt that the media is negative or just a reflection of the society. Let's listen in.
Media imetusaidia sana kumulika vitu zingine zenye zinakuwa inside the government, parastatals wanamulika vitu mingi. Lakini sasa maybe media inaweza protect the government. Mimi naweza sema ni kama places mahali kama kuna security issues, hiyo at least iko better. Lakini sasa ikikuja kwa corruption ndio imemaliza nchi. So I think they must play their role or inform wananchi so that we can know what is going on in government.
In my opinion, I want to say that the media is doing a good work, unveiling all the things that are happening in the country. And I also like, you report it as it is.
Watu wa media wanafanya kazi nzuri, hawafanyi kazi mbaya, manake hao ndio macho yetu. Hao ndio tunategemea katika maisha yetu. Vitu ambao wanatuambia tunaamini ni vitu vya ukweli. Na hawezi kudanganya, manake ni kazi ya mtu anafanya, lazima kazi yake aisingatie, manake ni kazi ambayo inampatia mapato yeye na familia yake. Media is not negative. They are okay, and we are very comfortable how they are working, doing their work. Yes.
As much as we appreciate the good work that is done by the media, sometimes among the masses we feel that there may be not a balanced way of doing it, of educating or disseminating information.
We appreciate that for stories to sell, sometimes there is need to capture what is sensational, but it's also important to capture what is related to development.
And I think there is some element of truth in that, because nowadays I watch news and I sometimes have to tell my children, hey, don't watch that, hey, go away, and that kind of thing. And I don't think that should be happening.
Maybe we need to encourage the media to think always about the glass half full, not half empty, so that every given time we try to actually encourage the positivity in what we do. That way, of course, it gives hope and it builds confidence among the populace.
When you put negative things, you discourage the audience and everybody else. So we would like to encourage you that be covering on the positive side of good things, such that we become encouraged, and those who are also seeing you and the audience can always think positively.
Currently as it is, the media is providing unbiased information to the consumers, and I urge them to continue with that spirit so that they can keep the Mwananchi, the Wanjiku informed of the current state of affairs.
Sometimes sieti mnaongea negative things, for example kwa gava, kuna vitu poa pia inafanyanga. Kama imefanya kitu mzuri, just mulika. Kama imefanya kitu mbaya, mulika. So hiyo itafanya tujue tuko wapi kama Wakenya.
Quick views there, and this was a main topic actually last week, and I just want to give an opportunity to our panel. I'll start with Christine Nguku because I believe one of the conversations I had not too long ago, actually was a while back, it was about how positive the news can be and how negative it is. It actually can be tiring to watch. Many people tell me that on a daily basis, and they feel maybe I'll be out of work because they have tuned off or tuned out from watching news. Christine Nguku, from your experience from back in the day when you were at KTN and you looking at the media right now and the negative and the positive side of what we display, are we overly negative or is it what the society is?
The media is usually expected to be a reflection of society.
Yes.
And it is our duty to serve the public interest. So if what it is that we are reporting as media is serving public interest, so be it. But in terms of weighing what is positive and what is negative, who is determining what is positive and what is negative? If it is the public that is determining that you're giving too much negative news, what is it that they consider negative?
Yes.
Is it that our society has so many negative things to report about that really the media can't avoid it? And again, I don't think we as the media need to completely go overly out of our way to ignore the real issues that affect the public in terms of how they are being served,
yes,
how their funds are being spent, just to go out of their way not to talk about it so that we can bring in something positive. So there's that consideration that the journalist always has to do, to consider, I'm going to do a story about this. What is my objective? What am I serving? Okay. Am I serving public interest? Am I serving an individual's interest? Am I focusing on the right to information for the audience? What am I really doing? Right. Am I doing the right thing? Or am I just hanging somebody up to dry, perhaps sometimes without even facts?
For the heck of it.
Yeah.
Macharia, what would you tell the president in terms of saying, media, please, just give more prominence to the positive side of life here in Kenya?
When I sat in the newsroom and had to make editorial decisions, I did not think of negative or positive. I just thought of news.
Yes.
Now, it is interesting that when the president talked about how the media should give more positive news, he started with the negatives. Okay?
Yes.
So he already we have that hierarchy of what's the most important paragraph. He started with the negatives, the corruption, the never-ending politicking. He did not mention any positive, which he thinks we are not covering. Mm-hmm. He only mentioned what he thinks are the negatives, and which are what to make the headlines. But I have not seen anybody come and say, there is a particular positive thing you did not cover. Not one.
Right.
So I think I don't think we are focused on negative or positive. News is news.
Is there ever a realistic day or picture scenario where we'll have equal, positive and negative?
That would be what we call a false balance.
Yes.
Our news is such that it is dominated by those in leadership and their shenanigans. Okay?
Yes.
They are the ones who are quite often setting the agenda. When the people you expect to provide leadership are busy fighting each other or conspiring to steal from the public legally or illegally.
Yes.
We can't ignore that.
Okay.
That does not mean we don't cover the good things that are happening every day. They get covered.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me throw it to leadership and shenanigans. I'm not saying that Kerichi is now up to that because he's been a member of the media fraternity and still is, I believe, because once a journalist, always a journalist. But from your perspective now, being covered as the county of Nairobi, would your appeal be the same?
Well, I think there is a perception of what sells, okay? And sometimes, I saw somebody saying this is an average news bulletin. Somebody has killed a family member, very bad. And then a corruption case, somebody was arrested, very bad. And then Kieleweke said this about Tanga. And then Tanga said this about Kieleweke, and then you go on a commercial break. And by the time you come back, some people will no longer probably be interested in that bulletin.
Is that a fair summary, though?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
But what I'm more concerned about is whether we can continue to maintain sight of the important things. Sometimes when you, for example, have a feature like a strength of a woman just in the middle of a bulletin, it doesn't have to be relegated to be a documentary that runs at the very end. Maybe after a few items, it is thrown in. Some of these things really add value. But when you feel like we are missing on the important things and concentrating on this politician said this about that politician because it is all leading up to an election that is coming, and we are not putting more emphasis to say that our economy is not doing well at all, and our borrowing is going over the roof. And Mark Masai once asked for the original contract of the SGR deal between Kenya and China, and we were promised that we will get that contract. And up to today, we have not seen it. I think it is still important. We still want to see what is in it. Have our assets been mortgaged? And is the port going to be sold? Is the airport going to go? So as much as, you sometimes see something that is almost false,
Yes.
You see somebody saying, so-and-so has been told not to step in this backyard. And when you check, you find it is some former MP who lost some election, I don't know how many elections ago. And that is a headline of a newspaper. Then you begin to ask yourself, was this really the best? Was this in the public interest to pick one old politician's sentiments and say so-and-so should not step in this area? So whether the news is a reflection of society, it is still, I think, incumbent on the media to still set the agenda. Okay. And set the agenda by bringing, things that are still close to the public, by interrogating our debt ceilings and where we are heading and where the economy is right now. It is still a very relevant story.
All right, Lydia, you're keen on governance and youth policy. Just tell us really quick, if your view as a background journalist, your background being in journalism, whether it can ever be said you have to be patriotic first, then professional as a journalist, or you're a journalist first, then you're Kenyan.
I think, first of all, we all have to be Kenyans first.
Yes.
But of course, the journalistic principles still apply. You have to tell the truth. Like Gaido has said, the story, you don't think about whether something is positive or negative, you just think about it in terms of there is a story and this is the truth.
It's to be told.
And the issue that I have, though, is that fine, the media is telling the truth, but is it the complete truth? Because there is so much information that is missing that it ends up being skewed, that it is incomplete. So that if you are talking, for example, about debt, that the Jubilee administration has accumulated a lot of debt, but fine, those are concerns, but when this money came, it went somewhere. What happened to that money? It was invested in some road somewhere. It was invested in a railway somewhere. What is the impact of that? So that you give the completeness of the truth, because if you don't give the complete truth, then you might as well be misleading the public. And so for me, my issue is the completeness of the story, so that as a journalist, you're able to bring the best version of the truth to the public. And for me, that would be the challenge.
All right, I don't know if anyone has a quick reaction to what has been said, and then we move on.
Okay.
Yes.
Ladies
Christine, and then Sharia.
Gaido is always a gentleman. When you talk about being a patriot, a profession across
Yes.
the board.
Yes.
So I wouldn't be comfortable measuring a journalist's story and saying this is a patriotic story or this is not a patriotic story. And I do agree with Lydia when Lydia says, do your homework, you know, do the research. Track the whole line all the way to the end. Don't just tell me X billions were lost or were looted. Looted by who? Went to where? What did they do? What ought to be done? Is there prosecution that needs to be done? You know, just don't leave me hanging.
Okay.
And then again, when you talk about those billions, please quantify it in a way that I can actually understand it. When you talk about billions, some people have never seen 10,000 shillings, all of it in one bundle like this. For them to start imagining 50,000,
yes,
to imagine 100,000. By the time you get to 1 million, they've completely lost focus or view of what you're talking about. So when you talk about billions, they're thinking, how much money is that? So I need the journalists to interpret what it is that we are talking about when we say public funds have been looted to the tune of billions.
Yes.
But then now bring that very quickly to what Kirich is referring to, that we are having our economy not growing. I mean, I need all that to be linked together. Join the dots for me so that I'm able to see as a member of the public, as a consumer of news, join the dots from here to here to here to here and show me how that looting reflects to the kind of life that I live, to the kind of things that I can be able to afford, to the decisions that I ought to start making because of where I am.
As a Kenyan. Macharia, real quick, we close this issue and move to the main.
Okay, I think Charles mentioned quite a number of important things that we should be following up. And indeed, those are important things, whether it is the public debt or the SGR contracts and all these things. But unfortunately, when we write about those things, is when some people think that is negative.
Yes.
As Christine said, what is positive and what is negative? Some people think that positive news is when you write the good things. The sun rose in the east. You know, nothing unusual happened. Okay?
Yes.
That is what they want to hear.
Yes.
The government has connected water in so many villages and so on. Yes, that is good news, but that is what they were elected to do. So it is not news when they do it, unless it is something extraordinary,
yes,
because they have never done it in the past. You know, things like those. And I agree with Lydia about the complete story. Certainly, if we talk about looting, then we must give the complete story. But we must not use that as an excuse to sanitize the extent of looting or the extent of mismanagement or misallocation of resources.
Right.
So there are still many things we have to. We will never quite be in agreement on all these things. Another thing is we sometimes tend not to see that the diversity of the Kenyan media. We have this monster we call the media.
Yes.
But let's face it, it is as diverse as can be. Within, for instance, the Standard Group alone, you will have the Nairobian with its own audience, and what you might call the main newspaper with its own audience. Here at Nation Center, you'll have the Business Daily, the East African, and you'll also have the Daily Nation and Taifa and all the others. The Star has its own, or rather, Radio Africa group.
Yes.
Under its stable, it has various radio stations which are very different from each other.
Yes.
There is that diversity, but we tend to look only at the Nation and the Standard and say these guys are negative.
Okay. And this is something by Dr. Andrew Sule. He says the view that news is a reflection of society is utopian in a Kenyan setting where in reality it is a reflection of the mindset and attitude of the media who on several occasions like peddling preconceived narratives. Well, that's a heavy one to end this part of the discussion. When we get back, we'll be candid on the handling of interviews I've handled or mishandled actually, or have handled me, as has been said by many people in the past. And we'll be talking the real talk and perspectives on this from my seniors and colleagues in this panel. So stay with us.